What's a good test to see if something is missing from your story, whether there's not enough intrigue, the suspects don't seem real, the stakes aren't high enough?
It's a very common problem, especially in first couple drafts, to have things not as suspenseful or falling flat or not making things as challenging on your investigator as you should. It's very common. So first of all, give yourself some grace, take a breath. I like to workshop my work. I always workshop my work because even if I think maybe there's enough suspense and challenge and mystery and authenticity, my writers group will definitely point out if there's not. And that's good. It's good to have that accountability. So I'm a big proponent of writers groups and community in writing, because once you find the right community, you'll start to, well, your work will get a lot stronger because you don't have to rely so much on yourself, because they'll point things out for you, and that's really helpful, although sometimes painful, but really helpful. So then the question becomes, how do I fix this? All right, it's falling flat. Things aren't as suspenseful. I like to make sure that there are obstacles in tension in every scene. And so when I'm going back through to edit second or third draft or more, that's one of my checklists. I want to see if there's something like a tension happening at the end of each scene, like a little baby, even if it's just a little baby cliffhanger, where or a little baby mystery, you're leaving us with something unresolved in almost every scene. It could be an emotional element, right, between characters, or a relational element. It could be more something to do with the case at hand. In order to make sure that's not happening with the case, or like to make sure again, this is why I love making a case file, because I'm going to clock that trail of evidence from the beginning to the end. And before I even get to the script or the page, I'm going to go through, and as if I'm the criminal committing the crime, and then I'm the investigator investigating the crime. And I want to make sure that the trails of evidence make sense and that they have a lot of tension. And I want to make sure that my criminal's smart and my investigator's really smart. So for me, it's a lot of pre-work to see that that's all happening. And it really just kind of takes practice too. You kind of write a lot of limp things before things start to really sing. And then sort of innately, you get a sense like, oh, if your gut's kind of telling you like, yeah, there's just not enough tension here. There's just nothing really happening. There's not enough suspense. I think it's important to listen to that as well, because 10 times out of 10, there's a problem there. I rely a lot on my instinct. And the more you write, the sharper your instinct becomes, I think, if you're serious about it. It's such a great question, because I'm trying to think over the 20 years I've been doing this, how did I learn that? And it was really it wasn't a book learning, it really wasn't a thing that I read in a book or watched in a video or took a class on. It was very much just practicing the craft, knowing, first of all, what goes into a great crime story, what makes it sing, what makes it pop, what makes it binge-worthy, and then testing it out on my writer group, and then just using my instinct, story instinct, really, I guess.
I
would call it.
That's good. That could be a book too. Story instincts. That's good.
That.
I like that. Good. You can put the crossbones and things. Yeah. The case file that you begin, is this a metaphorical file where you'll do it on your computer, or do you actually have like a manila folder where you create like your own sheet with different pieces of evidence and log things? And
that would be super fun. I've never done that.
Okay.
But that would be really fun. I usually just start everything by hand. I'll write notes and notes and notes by hand, and then it ends up on my computer and just becomes a computer file, where I've sort of done all the exercise of the case. So, but I kind of like, creating an actual case file. That'd be fun. Create your own evidence pieces.
There's your interactive game.
Yeah.
So you're doing this as if you are the investigator, from the POV of the investigator.
First the investigator, then the criminal, or vice versa. I mean, you can do either way, but I try to take both points of view. Like, okay, if I'm the criminal and I want to create a crime, I'm going to commit a crime, I'm going to walk myself through it from the beginning to post. And then what did I do? How did that happen? And then as an investigator, I can say, I've just been thrown into this. I have to investigate this crime. What, from the beginning to the end of solving it, what am I coming across? Because, right, in the real world, a detective or a investigator may not find everything, which is really, I think, good. We don't want our heroes to find everything either. But I need to know both. As the creator, as the goddess of this world, I need to know both. I don't always use everything. It's probably not wise to use everything, because otherwise it'd be just like a game of matching, right? It'd be too easy. But I need to know from both points of view what happened, so that I can successfully play that cat and mouse game with them, if that makes sense. Almost like a chess game.
It does. So. And speaking of which, you mentioned the investigator doesn't always have everything. In real life, when a case turns cold, quote unquote, is it because there's not enough evidence, there's not enough funding? What's the usual reason why a case is sort of tucked away?
Right, there's a lot of reasons. A case officially becomes cold after 12 months. So then it goes into that designation. So during that first 12 months, it gets, a lot of attention. It could be because there's just not enough evidence that leads to a particular person of interest. A lot of times there's not enough person power to investigate. There's not enough funds. These police departments are severely underfunded. There's not enough people. It's all of these things that happen. There's a lot of cold cases in our country, a lot. And it really really kind of fizzles out because of sort of a combination of all those things. And it doesn't mean that it won't ever get solved, but it needs at some point a little boost of something, whether it's a person just going further into investigating to make those connections, money for that person to do that. And then, of course, when a crime happens, that's not the end. Like, then crimes keep happening. So then the workload, right? There's a constant workload coming in every day. It's not like you can just solve that crime, and put a pause on the world. Pause, everybody. No more crimes a second. I got to solve this one. There's constantly more and more stacking up. So it's a workload problem as well.
And are there some nonprofits that you can different people can sort of crowdsource their efforts to solve cold cases?
Mm-hmm. There are, and different, there's actually probably lots of them. I got involved with the Cold Case Foundation. They are a national organization that's a nonprofit, and they really solve the hardest to solve cases. It's free. They're all but funded through donations and, not any sort of outside other, agency money or anything like that. And so there are organizations like them that will help people. They are awesome, and they are growing, and they rely a lot on retired law enforcement and retired investigators to come in and volunteer their time to which I think is awesome because you have, people coming in who have decades of information, knowledge about how to do this and the time. So.
And the intuition.
And the intuition.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. What's better, a victim we can root for in a story or a villain we can love to hate?
Depends on the story type. Of the 11 crime story types that I talk about and teach, there's one crime story type that's different than all the rest, and that's called the caper. And this is a very, very popular, fun crime story type because in that crime story type, we are rooting for the villain. The villain is our hero. The villain is the bad guy. And we love to root for the villain because typically the villain has been wronged in their past and now they're taking justice into their own hands. And we're like, yes, right? Because how many times have maybe we been wronged and we couldn't do anything about it? And we just would have loved to take justice in our own hands and like avenge our crime or our injustice. And so we love this crime story type. So I don't think it's an either or situation. I think there's just sometimes we love this crime story type of rooting for the villain. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, classic example. Thelma and Louise, classic example. Like one of my favorites. Hell or High Water, which came out a few years ago, has quickly and was kind of quiet, like just kind of came and went. But it's brilliant caper about familial love, rooted in familial love about two brothers who commit crimes in order to avenge their mother's wrong, something that bad that happened to their mother, right? Who's not going to root for that? Even though they're doing terrible things. All of the Ocean's movies are caper, Italian Job. And those villains, it's more of a team, right? It's more of a multiple, I would say it's a team sport, but a character, a team of characters, and they're just kind of fun. I think there's maybe some avenging that goes on, definitely in the Italian Job, but in the Ocean's 11 one, like it's really just fun to watch them get away with this big crime and sort of mess with the system. So that is, I think, in its own, just a story type that we love. Separate from, but not necessarily unequal from, the stories where we get very invested in the victims and we want to see them. It's just a different story type where you're focusing more on the victim's story and how does that get resolved and redeemed. And so I just think they're just kind of different, but not necessarily one is better than the other, I guess. So, yeah.
What makes a satisfying ending?
I believe that a satisfying ending does not necessarily have to be a closed, happy, everything gets wrapped up in a little bow, but it needs to be cathartic in that whatever injustice was set up at the beginning needs to be righted. Whatever chaos happened to this person at the beginning needs to somehow be ordered. There has to be an element of redemption. Even if it's just a little bit, we can see that the world is just a little bit brighter for that person, that hero, or that victim. I think that's the catharsis we're all looking for in this genre, and that we're all looking for in ourselves, our own worlds.
And would it depend? You said earlier, like cozy mysteries. Okay, that's more maybe lighthearted, and in the end, the sun will shine again, and there's harmony restored to the neighborhood. But maybe Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, not so much.
Right. I mean, you have the Hallmark mysteries, which are super popular, right? And they're great, and like, could binge watch those all day, right? Those and the Christmas movies. And there's definitely a place for that. It's lovely. And then you have something more like What Happens on Lifetime, which is definitely the genre of women's stories and women wanting to be wanting to have right restored because bad things have happened to them. And so there's that sort of a little bit darker level of story. Yeah, and then we can go Silence of the Lambs or what did you just say? Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Yes, which I love Swedish noir. I love that Nordic noir. Love it. It's because you're right. It doesn't. There is a satisfying ending in that she helps them catch this horrible person who's been trafficking women. It's horrifying, kind of really dark and grisly, but she does help avenge all that, and so it's extremely satisfying ending. But you kind of get muddy getting to the end of that. So.
And the writer had his own interesting story too, and mystery behind his death.
Oh, did he? I didn't read about that. Oh.
Well, there's different theories, but anyway,
well,
people can Google that.
I have
no opinion on either one, but there's been mystery behind it. So.
Oh, I love it.